Inspired Else's Radio. You are tuned into the Drive Time Show with Sharneille. And as promised, I have Miss Barbara Meyer with me doing the Zoom interview with regards to mental health. So she is from Cape Mental Health, and she's going to tell us more about what they are about and the services that they do, and how we can give you more like insight into what mental health is all about, and especially coming from October transitioning into November, because November focuses more on men's health. So can you please introduce yourself, Miss Barbara?
Thank you so much, Chanel. Yes, my name is Barbara Meyer. I'm the PR and Communications Officer here at Cape Mental Health. So for your listeners that may not know about the work that we do, we are a mental health service provider, and we are specifically based and we work in communities. So what we do is that we've got various programs, like as in face-to-face counseling that we do, where if you need to talk to somebody, you can come into our offices and just open up and start talking about whatever may be you may find troubling you at this time in your life. And then after that, we also have social workers that actually go out if a person is struggling with their mental health, if you're struggling with depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar, any of these different you know mental health conditions, then you can actually contact Cape Mental Health. And once we've made contact with you, then our social workers will come out with you and just walk that journey with you.
Yeah.
Other than that, but we've got many programs. We also have a daily pop-in facility that you can come and just to spend time with your peers, other persons that have walked the same journey as you, and you can just talk to them and meet with them. And we've got social workers there that also work with you to be able to reintegrate with society again. Besides that, we've got um, programs for persons with intellectual disabilities as well. There's actually quite a lot of people that have intellectual disabilities that may not know it, and they just drop out of school and they
Mm.
don't actually realize that they have a diagnosable condition. And we've got centers and work programs for them as
Excuse
well.
me, can I come just
So
in
that's,
there?
yes,
Can you make an
yes.
example of somebody that has intellectual disability or yeah.
So what you saying, what would that person present as?
Yeah.
So a person with an intellectual disability, usually they discover that quite young. So just say if you have an intellectual disability, when they will actually see that, even from the start, you would be struggling with things that other children are doing. They're reaching their milestones earlier, like sitting and
Mm.
standing, walking, talking. So you would be reaching that a little bit later than the other persons. Um, Also, other than that, like once you reach school, what it's often diagnosed at school that the person may have struggling with seeing and understanding the words that they are seeing. Maybe they're struggling with reading and writing, and it doesn't matter how much work you put into the person, they're still busy struggling to be able to understand and comprehend. The thing is that um, with intellectual disability, it's very important that it's not something that's an illness or that you can actually fix if you take the right medication. It
Mm.
is something that will stay with you forever. But you can get it from an illness. You can get it from something like meningitis. There's certain illnesses that actually impact the brain. So children when they are very young, if they get impacted by that, you know, that can actually, and then there's also some kinds of conditions that a child may have, and that just may just be, maybe a problem that happened during the pregnancy, or maybe it's fetal alcohol syndrome as well. That can also happen when moms are drinking or taking drugs while their children are still in
Mm.
the womb. That can also impact on the intellectual disability as well. So there's so
Okay.
many factors that can impact, but it is something that's diagnosable, and you would have to go and see a doctor. So if you see that your child is busy presenting with some of these challenges, then you go and, maybe at the school, they will tell you that maybe your child has an intellectual disability. But a lot of parents think that this is the end of the world. This is
Mm.
not the end of the world.
True.
It's just a new way of doing things. And there are centers, we have programs for persons to be able to, irrespective of the intellectual disability, they can attend our centers for children, or when they grow up for adults. And we've got work skills programs and, loads of different things. So depending on the severity of the intellectual disability, we will be able to connect up with their skill level. And if it's a minor intellectual disability, then there are still many job opportunities that we'd be able to
Mm.
support them with. So
Okay,
that's
just to
just an
come
example
in
of
the
what we do.
okay, so growing up, I was exposed or confronted with a type of mental illness, in the case of intellectual disability. And for a long time, I thought like, okay, that is what I know mental health or mental illness is. But then growing up, I discovered that no, it can actually people with how can I put it, normal looking people can also like be diagnosed with mental illness. And I did not understand what the difference was, except for the fact that the one looks more disabled than the other. However, I've also come to understand that inclusivity is very important when it comes to people that is mentally challenged with severity, is also they are also important and needs to be included in society like the rest of us. So can you like explain like the difference in the different degrees to mental illness with regards to the intellectual challenge one to the one that maybe has depression or anxiety, because these are what
So,
is common amongst our people.
so what we do is that we split it in between persons that have a psychosocial disorder, which
Mm-hmm.
means that they have more of a psychiatric illness. So that would fall under depression, anxiety, um, um, schizophrenia and bipolar, and then you would but those particular conditions, it's got nothing to do with your IQ, if I have to say it in that way, because a person with depression or schizophrenia or bipolar, they can be quite high achievers. So, and they can be going to university, they can be finishing school. So it's got
Mm.
nothing to do with your intellectual disabilities, your ability to be able to read and write. And then we go over to your intellectual disabilities. Intellectual disabilities is where you struggle with reading and writing, and even like your understanding of situations. So often a person with an intellectual disability will be younger than their age. So you would think that
Mm.
a 20-year-old is acting more like a 10 or an 8-year-old. They may have an intellectual disability because it's the 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 cognitive, the ability to be able to understand, to know what's going on in society, to be able to understand simple things like getting a job, crossing the street, knowing when someone is going to commit a crime. They can be quite naive even, and that also makes them much more vulnerable in society,
Mm.
a person with an intellectual disability. So those are the two. But it's just important for us to know that we all have mental health. Mental health is
Mm.
essentially how we are interacting. So the way we are interacting with each other, the fact that we can have a conversation, um, and that we can make friends in a healthy way, that we can maybe deal with stress, that we don't get overly stressed when a situation becomes a little bit unbearable.
Mm.
um Even the way we you know if people that are very fast to maybe start arguments and maybe take a small situation and then it will grow and grow and grow. So something like that as well is part of our mental health. So it's all the way how we deal with people, how we deal with our emotions, how we can cope with situations, and even our sense of reality, our
Yeah.
perceptions of what is busy going on. So a person that is mentally healthy, I might just tell you, you came in late today. Then you'll say, oh, sorry, the taxi was late. That's the thing. So that
Mm.
would be a normal interaction between the two of us. But if you are not feeling well, you would immediately get upset and saying, why are you always um, on my case, and everybody's against me, and it would sort of blow up, and you would we would like try and sort of, so the situation that is, if we are not feeling mentally well, can grow and grow and grow bigger than the situation actually is, bigger than
Mm.
the fact that you were 5 minutes late for whatever reason. So and while we all have days like that, we need to become aware when it becomes longer than just days, when it
Mm.
goes into weeks and months, and we're still feeling like that, because we all have days that we are
Yeah.
not so great. But usually, if we are mentally well, then it doesn't impact us for a long, long, long time. And that's usually how you can tell when a person is struggling, when they can't get out of that rut, when they can't get
Mm.
out of that situation, or that long, long sadness. Yeah.
Okay, so like in Alsis River and surrounding areas, we are quite faced a lot with gang violence and crime and stuff that just builds fear in us. And our people do not always know that subconsciously it affects us, and sometimes it can lead them to alcohol, for instance, and through that we see the behavior, and sometimes the behavior is very questionable. When do you know when you have a condition in that context? Because in our communities, those kinds of scenes are normalized as wat gebeur in ons gemeenskappe. But then there are those that's whose behavior is just on another level and it is very questionable. And you would easily say to that person, needs a smile om na dokter gaan sien. But yeah, so when do you know when there's actually something very wrong with you in terms of your mental health?
It's really great that you're asking me that question, because, we just closed October, and October is actually World Mental Health Awareness Month.
Mm-hmm.
So now we've got sort of different levels. Let me just explain it to you, and I'll come back to the,
Okay.
the issues, what's going on specifically in Elsie's River. So the World Federation of Mental Health is a lot of organizations all over the world, and they every year in October they choose a topic. So this year it was access to services, mental health in catastrophes and emergencies. So
Okay.
that is now what's happening globally. So now we are part of, Cape Mental Health is part of the South African Federation for Mental Health. Um, and that is all the different mental health organizations. So we also choose a theme that is close to that theme. But
Mm.
we saw violence as, addressing violence as a significant challenge to mental health in South Africa. So you can already see how your issue with your first question that you're asking about what's going on in Elsies River and the gangs and
Mm.
and the violence there, does it actually impact it? The answer is yes, it does impact the person. So we even the thing is that South Africa is regarded as one of the most violent countries in the world, and
Mm.
because of that, we are normalizing the extent of the violence that we are experiencing on a daily basis.
Mm.
It's not normal what we are going through.
Yeah.
So, and when we come to areas in the Western Cape, in Cape Town, then we take a look at issues like gangsterism, We take a look at the taxi violence that we experience. We go into domestic violence or gender-based violence that's busy happening on a daily basis. That what we regard as normal and the extent of normal here is actually not normal with
Mm.
the rest of the world. It is worse. So, and that actually impacts us. So we are actually, while we are sitting here and while you are sitting in your studio, um, um, we are under more pressure in areas, especially areas that have poverty as well, playing into all the other things, because poverty acts as a cycle,
Mm.
that you are in. So now when you take a look at poverty as a cycle with violence, it's because there's the majority of, I think it's about 40% of persons are unemployed in South Africa. And the it's probably much higher in areas that don't have um that we don't have jobs that are busy going around, or we don't have high skills. So now persons are desperate to be able to, feed their families, get hold of,
Yeah.
to get hold of resources, and then
Mm-hmm.
they go into crime. So what that is basically, the cycle of crime that is actually going with that. And then our young persons, because there's very little opportunity for jobs, and maybe because of the peer pressure, everybody said it's nice for, come join us, we're in a gang here, you get to belong and things like that. They start and they get into back into the cycle. But unfortunately, these cycles of crime is also strongly linked with violence. So now, just taking a look at the fact that so many of our communities, we become almost comfortable with the violence
Yeah.
that we
Complacent.
which is not normal. But if you can just take a look that we may be experiencing things like um you know, yes. So the you would actually have that the person would actually be struggling from um depression, because you are sitting in a situation that you don't feel that you can get out of. That is basically what
Mm.
depression is that the situation is that bad and you don't have any hope to be able to get out of it. So now you're in that. So that is one of the mental health consequences of violence. Then
Violent.
you also see that people around you, they may be even more anxious, anxious
Mm.
to be able to walk down the street. Your child is going out, you don't know where your daughter is, it's now getting dark, and you get completely out of, you know control, because you know
It's a
that something
constant
real.
worry.
Yes, yes, because you know of all the things that can happen to your child. Even if your
Mm.
child is just sitting by the neighbor having a chat there, your hypervigilance that you have and the paranoia that you have because of the violence that you've experienced in your area is just so much more. So, because of these issues, as in depression and anxiety, people actually turn to things like drugs
Mm.
and and alcohol to cope. So now
Yeah.
you're anxious and you're worried, and you have this edge. Then you come home and everything is sort of you people sometimes can turn it to alcohol. The thing is that while alcohol can make you relax for a while, it can actually exacerbate the situation and actually make the violence worse. So
Mm.
so now you're getting into the cycle of back into, you've got depression, anxiety, the situation that's happening in the community of unemployment, of what goes with unemployment, the stress of that, holding on to jobs that maybe you don't want to be in, um, and then also your children, or children being sucked into the community and where drugs and gangsterism is. So that in itself is where it has a huge impact on us. So just to continue, this actually has been a lot of studies on this. And it says that persons that actually are in children specifically that grow up in a very violent environment have
Mm.
problems at school
Yeah.
because they struggle to read and to
Mm.
write. You have to be relaxed to be able to learn. You have to be fed, you have to feel confident, and you have to feel good about yourself. to
Yeah.
be able to learn and absorb. But if you're in a situation where that you now have all of these other issues that are busy going on with you, you struggle to be able to reach your full potential. And then also, mentioning going back to the alcohol and drugs that is part of our society, if if the child's mom drank during that time of,
Mm.
at any time, even if she was unaware of it in the beginning,
Yeah.
that may also impact the ability to be able to absorb information. So now you're sitting, so you will see that there's actually more persons that live in a with a mental health condition that will come from an area that a disadvantaged area or a poor area,
Mm.
because of all those other factors that are busy happening. Yes. If I can just carry on that, our health system isn't that strong. So what happens in cases like that is that, you know, we usually go, if you break your leg, you will go to the doctor. If
Yep.
you have stomach ache or diarrhea or something, you will go and get something. But
Mm.
persons often don't do anything if they're feeling out of control. They don't ask for help. They don't do anything if they feel that everybody is going up against them during that time, when they feel very paranoid.
Mm.
Um, if they can't read and write, they just drop out of school and they do something else, you know. So they will not be going and getting the help that they need. One of the reasons
Um,
is that also
Excuse me.
expensive. Sorry,
Do
Chanel?
you think it's because of a lack of information, especially in our schools where we find teenagers that is still developing and growing up in environments like this? Do you think like education needs to now start educating the learner or yeah.
It's a combination. Well, a young person, I don't know whether you've heard that, that the brain only stops developing when you're 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the prefrontal lobe. And that part of your brain is just in front of your brain over
Yeah.
here. And that is the part of your brain that makes you think through consequences, that makes you think long term, that helps you not overreact. But
Mm.
you only get that when you are like 25, when you're calmer.
Mm.
So a young person doesn't have that. That is why they're so impulsive. You know,
Yep.
if it seems like a good idea now, off they will go and do it. If they're angry now, they will go and get into that fight because they won't think of if I get into a fight, if I might go get into jail, I might get in trouble at school, I might get expelled. So that part of the brain doesn't work yet.
Mm.
So and so that is one of the things, is that it's partly the education, but it's also just the makeup of a child, of a young
Yeah.
person, that their brain they don't think like that. So later on in your life, and I'm not too sure how old you are, but after a while, you actually realize, why do what
Mm.
were you thinking at that moment? It's purely because your brain, that part that says, what are you thinking, was not
Yeah.
there yet.
Mm.
So that's one of the reasons. Also, there's a big stigma to talk about mental health. So, like we have kind of names to call people that are not acting, uh, um, you know, as we think is normal. But actually,
Mm.
1 out of 4, and it's becoming 1 out of 3 people are actually struggling with a mental health condition. So if you take a look at, and if there are 2 other people around you and you're sitting there in a studio with 2 other people, someone in there is struggling with either their depression or anxiety, or they're struggling with their reading or something in there. Somebody there is struggling with something with their mental health that they actually needed to go out and get help for, but they don't.
Mm.
So in South Africa, only 1 out of 10 persons actually get help, the help that they need. So if you think that only 1 out of 10 persons get help, that means that the majority of people are struggling around us. not getting help. And the reason is that there's very little money for programs
Mm-hmm.
like Cape Mental Health, very little money for programs like that. Um, and mental health is often seen as an expensive, um, something that only rich people go and do. Go and talk to therapists and counselors and get medication. And it's also, there's a big stigma that I'm going to lose my job if I tell my boss that I have got depression,
Mm.
or if I'm feeling overwhelmed or not feeling right or I can't focus. So there's a fear that people are going to be laughed at, that they're going to lose their job. Um, and those are the reasons why people don't get help. There's not enough resources. A younger person's brain isn't developed enough. There's a lot of stigma and shame. And violence in the house, there's a lot of stigma around that as well.
Yeah,
People will keep it quiet, and that same child will become anxious and depressed and struggle to focus at school. And that is just becomes worse, because usually it's those children that become targets later on to bullying, and things like that, because they're already worried, and scared. So,
okay.
and there's, yes.
Okay, we
So,
just have like 10 minutes left.
oh, okay.
So would you say that for communities like ours, like where the behavior is on a level where you can question it, do you say the answer to those things besides the help that they can get is awareness, the education, the insight, the knowledge that needs to reach them? Because you mentioned something about people going into alcohol, substance abuse, instead of going to someone that really can that they can talk to or that can help them.
Yes, it is awareness. Another study showed that it's mostly women that come to ask for help. So, we're entering Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. Um, Men do not come and ask for help. They tend to only come, even if they are aware that they need that something, they don't, maybe not aware that they need help, but
Mm.
they know that things are going wrong.
Yeah,
So the relationships are going wrong and things are going wrong at work. They coping, they're not coping, they're just drinking and they're getting consumed with alcohol.
that is the way of
Um,
coping.
so they it it's because men do not come when they need to come soon enough. It's not only
Yeah.
about awareness, it's about knowing when to get help so
Mm.
that that you can learn to cope. So yeah, so what we find is that women usually come earlier when they are struggling, when they're not feeling right.
Yeah.
And they will come and they will seek help and the journey is easier. But men, because of I think that term, what's it, toxic masculinity, um, that means that they need to be strong
Yeah.
constantly.
And boys, men don't
That
cry.
they
Those type of
Yes,
things.
men don't cry. And if they do cry, they even as a little child, they just get a smack or whatever,
Mm.
told to keep quiet. And they learn from their fathers as well, how to be able to deal with the emotions. And if their fathers didn't deal with the emotions, or if their father's absent, then they will struggle even more about how to know what to do.
Mm.
So, a program like this, we will often find, I will give the number, and it's mostly women that will phone. And even if it's the men that's in trouble, it will be women that will be phoning about the men in their lives that are busy
Mm.
struggling, the moms that phone about their sons, um, with addiction and what happens with substance abuse is that there is actually something that is called um, um, a substance abuse psychosis, where when you actually you've consumed so much
Mm.
alcohol and so much drugs, it's actually changed the way your brain is,
Yeah.
and that can actually give you cause mental health problems. Some people can consume alcohol and they can still function, and some people can't, you
Mm.
know We're just made in different ways like that. But so the one of the things is that often when persons do come to Cape Mental Health and they do have also a substance abuse problem as well, we first that they would first need to be able to go onto a program to be able to deal with the substance abuse because we need to understand what is the cause of the mental health issues that they are busy going through at that moment. So and of often substance abuse is just used as a coping tool, and we need to get past that to see what is the real issues that has been bothering you for such a long time
Mm.
that you feel that you need to get so drunk or so out of it that you don't need to think about your problems that is busy going on at home, you know?
Okay.
So, yeah. So I
Yeah,
think especially
so
with men, but with women, it's
so
easier.
in the context of violence, you would say the answer is like to reach the people that can help you. Because such programs such as this and awareness campaigns are there to not just give you insight, but to give you information in order for you to come into your path of healing. And I think like the more we do this kind of stuff, the more it will become a norm for people. Hulle hoor dit elke keer. So they will start to question their behavior and maybe be lesser on the drinking because South Africa, like a lot of people drink in South Africa, and a lot of things
Mhm.
happen because of alcohol. That is why there is so many abuse. And for us women, we mainly suffer from the hands of men. But then we are asking this question: is it that men should get the help so that the woman can feel more safer in contact in relation to men? Do you think like we need to like put emphasis on men and their mental health in order for a safer community where woman is, or what do you say?
Um, well, you know, there is a what they do say is that, you can only change yourself. Even if you give all the information to another person, they may not take it.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that, and what has actually come out of this campaign that we had is that organizations need to be working closer together. So during this, in October, we actually worked with some gender-based violence organizations, and we worked with SAPs as well, to
Mm,
be able to, and we had some activations to show that there is a link between um, violence, gender-based violence, and your mental health.
mm,
So if you are experiencing um, gender-based violence and it is impacting on your mental health, yes, you can come to Cape Mental Health and we can assist you with your mental health journey. And we will also give you the advice and the tools and the information to get help, if you need it from the police or to be able to get help there, or if you need to go to a gender-based violence and find a shelter. So it's intertwined with each other.
mm.
You can't do any of this if you're not feeling mentally well. You
Yeah.
you need your mind to succeed any of these steps. You do need your mind to do that. But once you can start at Cape Mental Health, but the journey won't stop at us.
Mm,
We will just give you that support and that knowledge, and that if you need that mental support during that time, about what you're busy going through, and if you are diagnosed to a point that you may need some extra assistance, we are there to support you during that time. Yeah, and your journey of accessing we all know that the government hospitals are not perfect. But Cape Mental Health easier to be able to support you as well. So we will explain things like, what the kind of medication you're busy using at this moment, what impact it's having, encouraging you to take the medication, but not only the medication, to get the counseling that you need and the steps that you need, and also to be able to guide you on your way. If you need to talk to, SAPS, the police, if you need to be talking to a gender-based violence organization. Um, and
okay. Barbara, our
yeah,
time is
we're
actually
running
up.
out of
Can you
time.
just quickly give the numbers or contact
Okay.
details for Cape Mental Health
Yes.
and a last
So,
message on that note?
okay. Okay, so our phone number
Mm-hmm.
is 021
Oh,
447 9040.
9040. Okay.
Yes. So it's 447 9040.
Mm-hmm.
You can email us at info at cmh.org.za. And then you can also take a look at our Instagram and our Facebook pages as well.
Okay.
It's at Cape Mental Health. So that's our handle, at Cape Mental Health. And then you can send a message to us and we will come back to you. What we will do is that we'll probably ask you for a phone number, and then our social workers, our counselors will contact you. And the good thing about having a social worker as a counselor is they can also give you the steps and the information so that you can get your power back, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not only just getting the mental health support that you need,
Yeah.
but also the good advice that you can take.